On Thanksgiving Day, my daughter cooked a full holiday dinner for 20 relatives. And then my sister called. We decided to eat at my house. I kept calm. What happened next made my sister regret that decision. My name's Diane Foster, I'm 52 and I live in Columbus, Ohio. Let me back up 2 days before that phone call because you need to understand what my daughter Emily went through to get to that moment. Emily is 26. She works 2 jobs and still volunteered to host Thanksgiving this year because, in her words, "Mom, you've done it every year since I was born, let me take it this time." I cried a little when she said that. She spent an entire weekend planning the menu: turkey, a honey-glazed ham, 3 kinds of pie, homemade rolls, the works. She started cooking at 6 a.m. on Wednesday. 12 hours. 12 hours of basting, peeling, chopping, crying over onions, texting me photos like, "Mom, look at this crust." Can you imagine putting that much of yourself into something for the people you love? That's what she did. Now here's where my sister Karen comes in. Karen has always been, let's say, competitive. Ever since we were kids, if I got a bike, she needed a better bike. If I baked cookies, hers had to be gourmet. It's exhausting, but she's my sister, so I've spent years just letting it go. Family, right? 2 days before Thanksgiving, my phone rings. It's Karen. "So I've decided we're doing dinner at my house this year," she said, like she was announcing the weather. I said, "Karen, Emily's been cooking for 2 days already. Everyone knows dinner's at her place." He just laughed. "Well, I already called everyone and told them to come to mine instead. I'm doing a full spread. Nobody in this family has ever seen a table like the one I'm setting. I want you to sit with that for a second. Would you have stayed calm?" Because I did not feel calm inside. I called Emily right after. She picked up cheerful, flour probably still on her hands, and I had to tell her that half our family, aunts, uncles, cousins, 20 people, were no longer coming to her house. I heard her voice crack on the phone. 12 hours, Mom. I did this for them. That night my brother Ray drove over. Ray's always been the one who tells it to me straight. He sat at my kitchen table, looked at Emily's untouched dishes covering every counter and said, "Diane, you gonna let Karen get away with this?" I told him I didn't know yet. But something in me had already decided I wasn't going to let my daughter's effort just get tossed aside for Karen's ego. Here's the thing you should know about my sister. She has never once in 30 years actually cooked a full holiday meal herself. Not once. So a little voice in my head said, if she's promising this unforgettable spread, where exactly is it coming from? I made a few calls. Turns out Karen had booked a full-service catering company out of Dublin, Ohio, to deliver everything at 3 p.m. sharp on Thanksgiving Day. Trays of turkey, sides, even a dessert table. All catered, all paid for, none of it made by her hands. And she was about to stand in front of our entire family and let everyone believe she'd slaved away in that kitchen, while my daughter's real 12-hour effort sat abandoned in my kitchen. I sat with that information for a long moment. Ray watched me go quiet and he knew that look on my face. "What are you thinking, Diane?" he asked. I picked up my phone and found the number for the catering company. What I said to that caterer set off a chain of events my sister never saw coming. I called the catering company, a small family-run business, and asked for the owner directly. A woman named Patricia answered. I introduced myself honestly. I told her I was Karen's sister and that I had a strange request. I said, "I'm not asking you to cancel the order. I'm asking you to hold the delivery. Don't bring the food at 3 p.m., bring it later." Much later. Patricia hesitated. She said that wasn't really something she could just do without a reason. So I gave her one. I offered to cover the cost of the entire order myself, on top of what Karen had already paid, if she would simply delay delivery by 3 hours. No harm to her business, no cancellation, nothing dishonest on paper. Slow. Was that manipulative? Maybe. Do you think what I did was fair or did I cross a line? I've asked myself that same question more than once. But Patricia asked me one question that told me everything. She said, "Can I ask why?" And I told her the truth. I told her about Emily. 12 hours of cooking thrown away over one phone call so that my sister could stand in a room and take credit for a meal she never made. Patricia went quiet for a second, then said, "I raised 3 daughters. I understand completely." She agreed. Thanksgiving Day came. Emily and I still went through the motions. We packed up some of her dishes just in case, put on real smiles, and drove over to Karen's house at 2:45 p.m. 15 minutes before Karen's big unveiling. The house was beautiful. Karen had gone all out on decorations, table runners, name cards, candles, the whole production. 20 relatives were seated. My Uncle Frank was already commenting on how good everything smelled, even though nothing had been cooked in that kitchen. Karen kept glancing at the clock, smiling that tight little smile she gets when she's performing for an audience. 3 p.m. came. No delivery. 3:15. Still nothing. Guests started shifting in their seats. My Aunt Susan leaned over and whispered, "Karen, honey, is the food almost ready?" Karen laughed it off. "Just running a few minutes behind." 3:30. Nothing. People's stomachs were audibly growling at this point. My cousin's kids were asking why the plates were empty. Karen excused herself twice to check on things in the kitchen. A kitchen with nothing in it but a bag of dinner rolls from the grocery store. By 4 p.m., the room had gone from polite patience to open confusion. 20 people staring at empty china, at a woman who had promised the greatest spread the family had ever seen. Do you think she deserved a little discomfort after what she did to Emily? I certainly did. Finally, Karen's husband asked her outright in front of everyone, "Karen, where exactly is this food coming from?" And that's when her face changed. That's when I knew, this was the moment. I stood up calm and said, "I think I understand what happened here. It seems dinner isn't coming. So, why don't you all come to our place instead? Emily's been cooking since 6 this morning." You should have seen my sister's face in that moment. 20 relatives silent, looking between her and me. What happened next, when everyone actually sat down at Emily's table, is something my sister never expected, and it changed our family for good. One by one, the relatives stood up from Karen's empty table. My Uncle Frank was the first to grab his coat. "Well, I'm not sitting here starving," he said, half laughing, half annoyed. Aunt Susan gathered her purse, gave Karen a sympathetic pat on the shoulder and followed. Karen just stood there in her decorated dining room, surrounded by candles and empty plates, watching her entire audience walk out the door. We all drove the 15 minutes back to my house. Emily nearly dropped her phone when she saw cars pulling into our driveway. Aunts, uncles, cousins all filing into our kitchen, apologizing for the chaos, hugging her, telling her how sorry they were that her hard work had almost gone to waste. We reheated everything. The turkey, the ham, the rolls, all 3 pies. Within 30 minutes our dining room was full, plates were full, and for the first time all day so was the room with actual warmth. My brother Ray leaned over to me at one point and just said, "You did good, Diane." Karen showed up about 40 minutes later. She stood in the doorway and honestly I felt for her for a second. She looked smaller, somehow embarrassed, out of her element. She admitted right there in front of everyone that the caterer never showed, and that she'd never actually planned on cooking anything herself. Nobody yelled at her. Nobody needed to. The silence and the empty chairs at her own table had already said everything. I pulled her aside later that night. I told her the truth, that I was the reason the delivery was delayed. I watched her face go through anger, then disbelief, then something quieter. She asked me why I'd do something so calculated. I told her, "Because you were about to let everyone believe Emily's 12 hours meant nothing, while you took credit for food you never made." Karen didn't talk to me for almost 2 weeks after that. But then right before Christmas she showed up at my door with a box of ingredients and asked Emily if she could help her learn to actually cook a real family meal. No catering, no shortcuts, just her own 2 hands. That Christmas Karen and Emily cooked side by side in my kitchen. My sister apologized to my daughter directly, told her she was proud of the woman she'd become, and admitted she'd let her own pride get in the way of what really mattered. This family sitting around one table together. We've hosted every holiday since then as one family, no more competing dinners, no more phone calls about moving it to my house. Just one table, all of us, the way it should have always been. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, it really does mean a lot. And if there's something you didn't agree with or something you'd have done differently, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Thanks for watching. Yellow heart.